A tech millionaire daughter saved a dying woman, but as soon as he saw her face, he immediately married her. Blood. So much blood pooling beneath the woman's cracked skull that Sierra's designer heels slipped on the asphalt. No cell service, no other cars, just her, a storm, and a dying stranger who'd somehow crawled 20 feet from her overturned Honda before collapsing. Have you ever saved someone's life? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The rain turned red on Highway 1 the day Sierra Vaughn discovered that saving a stranger's life would cost her everything she thought she knew about love. Blood. So much blood pooling beneath the woman's cracked skull that Sierra's designer heels slipped on the asphalt. No cell service, no other cars, just her, the storm, and a dying stranger who'd somehow crawled 20 feet from her overturned Honda before collapsing. Stay with me, Sierra whispered, pressing her silk Hermes scarf against the gaping wound. The woman's eyes fluttered open, brown, desperate, familiar in a way that made Sierra's chest tighten. 20 minutes earlier, Sierra had been screaming at her father in his Palo Alto mansion. Tech billionaire Richard Vaughn owned half of Silicon Valley cybersecurity patents, but he couldn't own his daughter's choices. Not anymore. You're 22 years old, he'd shouted, his voice echoing through their glass monument to success. You think the world outside these gates gives a damn about your feelings? Sierra had grabbed her keys, her credit cards, and her fury. The Maserati purred to life like a caged animal finally set free. She'd pointed it north toward Monterey, toward anything that wasn't her father's suffocating protection. Now, rain hammered her shoulders as she cradled a stranger's bleeding head. The woman's lips moved, forming soundless words Sierra couldn't catch over the storm's violence. I've got you, Sierra said, though she wasn't sure she had anyone, including herself. The nearest hospital was 40 miles away. Too far. Sierra dragged the woman toward her car, adrenaline making the dead weight feel manageable. Blood soaked through her white designer dress, turning it into something from crime scene. The Maserati's leather seats absorbed the crimson like expensive sponges. Sierra pressed the accelerator, her hands shaking as she held pressure on the wound with one hand and steered with the other. The woman's breathing came in shallow gasps. Don't you dare die on me, Sierra ordered. I didn't ruin my manicure for nothing. The joke fell flat in the storm's roar. Fear crawled up Sierra's throat as the woman's eyes rolled back. No pulse she could find. Sierra pushed harder on the wound, her own heart hammering against her ribs. Have you ever had a moment that split your life into before and after? When everything you thought you knew about yourself shattered in an instant? Tell me in the comments about your moment of truth. The rural clinic appeared through the rain like salvation. Sierra careened into the parking lot, horn blaring. Two nurses rushed out with a gurney. Professional hands took over, lifting the woman away from Sierra's blood-stained embrace. You saved her life, the younger nurse said, but Sierra barely heard her. She stood in the parking lot, rain washing the blood from her hands in pink rivers, watching strangers fight for a life she'd pulled back from the edge. 3 hours later, Sierra sat in the waiting room wearing scrubs someone had given her. Her ruined dress lay in a hospital bag beside her feet. The woman, Maria Santos, age 58, would live. Massive head injury, but she'd live. Sierra's phone buzzed with 17 missed calls from her father. She ignored them all. That's when the blacked-out SUV pulled up outside. The man who stepped out moved like someone carrying the weight of the world. Expensive suit, but not flashy. Controlled power in every step. When their eyes met through the glass doors, time stopped. Not because of attraction, though Sierra's body certainly noticed his dark eyes and strong jaw. Time stopped because of something far more dangerous than desire. Recognition. His face went pale as he stared at her, like he'd seen a ghost. Like she was someone he'd been searching for his entire life. Sierra's breath caught as he pushed through the doors, his gaze never leaving her face. He moved closer, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something else. Desperation. Excuse me. His voice was rough, controlled. Are you the woman who brought Maria Santos in? Sierra nodded, suddenly aware of how she must look in borrowed scrubs with blood still under her fingernails. Yes. Are you family? She's my mother. His voice cracked on the word. And you? He stopped, shook his head like he was trying to clear it. You look exactly like someone I've been trying to find for 3 years. Before Sierra could ask what he meant, her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't her father. The caller ID made her stomach drop. Vaughn's security team. They'd found her. Damian Cross had memorized every detail of his dead wife's savior from a single photograph. So when that same face stared back at him in a rural ER, he thought grief had finally driven him insane. The woman in the hospital scrubs couldn't be real. Same golden hair, same wide green eyes, same stubborn jawline he'd studied in that grainy donor photo for 3 years. But the photo showed a 19-year-old girl in a hospital bed. This woman was older, more beautiful, and very much alive. Your mother's going to be fine, she said, and even her voice matched the one he'd imagined in countless sleepless nights. The doctor said another 10 minutes, and she shrugged, but Damian caught the tremor in her hands. You saved her life. The words came out harsher than he intended. This woman, this impossible woman, had just pulled his mother back from death. Again. Do you have any idea what you've done? Her eyebrows lifted, pretty mouth forming a frown that made his chest tight. I stopped a woman from bleeding to death on the highway. Wouldn't you have done the same? His laugh was bitter, broken. Most people would have called 911 and kept driving. Well, I'm not most people. No, she definitely wasn't. The hospital's harsh lighting carved shadows under Damian's jaw as he stood frozen 3 feet away from her. His $3,000 Tom Ford suit incongruous against the small-town clinic's worn linoleum. A man worth billions reduced to stillness by a 22-year-old woman with blood under her fingernails. What's your name? He asked. Sierra. She hesitated. Sierra Vaughn. As in Richard Vaughn, the tech mogul who owned half of Silicon Valley's cybersecurity patents. Damian knew the name, knew the empire, but he'd never connected it to the anonymous bone marrow donor who'd given Elena 18 more months of life. Sierra Vaughn, the reclusive billionaire's daughter, had been the match. Had been 19 when she donated her bone marrow to save a stranger. Had been the angel Elena spoke about in her final days. You don't remember me, Damian said. It wasn't a question. Should I? Sierra's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. Look, I'm glad your mother's okay, but I need to. 3 years ago, you saved another life. A woman named Elena Cross. Stage for leukemia. You were her bone marrow match. Sierra's phone slipped from her hand, clattering on the linoleum. That's impossible. The donation was anonymous. I never knew who. She stared at him with dawning recognition. Cross. Elena Cross was your wife. The word hung between them like a confession. Sierra's chest rose and fell rapidly, and Damian fought the urge to reach for her, to touch her face and make sure she was real. She died anyway, Sierra whispered. 18 months later. 18 months of sunrises and laughter and love that wouldn't have existed without you. His voice cracked. I've been looking for you for 3 years. Have you ever met someone and felt like you knew them from somewhere? That strange familiarity that makes your skin tingle? Share your stories of déjà vu below. Sierra's breathing became shallow. She backed against the wall, shaking her head. This is crazy. This is completely insane. I saved one woman on the highway, and suddenly. It's not coincidence. Damian stepped closer, and Sierra's pupils dilated. Not from fear, from something else entirely. Elena used to say the universe doesn't waste connections, that some people are meant to find each other. Your wife is dead, Sierra said bluntly. Yes, and you've been stalking her bone marrow donor, trying to find her, to thank her. He stopped. To what? To tell her that Elena's final wish was for him to find love again, that she'd specifically mentioned the donor, calling her the woman with the generous heart. Sierra's phone rang. The ringtone was different this time, urgent, insistent. I have to take this, she said, but her eyes never left his face. Sierra, a man's voice, loud enough for Damian to hear. Thank God. The GPS tracker in your car stopped moving 3 hours ago. We're en route to your location. Her father's security team, coming to drag her back to her gilded cage. Sierra's jaw tightened. Tell him I'm fine. Ma'am, your father's orders were explicit. You're to return home immediately. And if I refuse, then we bring you back anyway. Damien watched emotions flicker across Sierra's face. Fear, anger, resignation. How long do I have? She asked. 20 minutes, maybe less. Sierra ended the call and looked at Damien with something like desperation. I need to go. Where? Anywhere that isn't home. She picked up the hospital bag containing her ruined dress. Your mother's room is 214. She was asking for the woman who saved her. Damien caught her wrist as she moved past him. Her skin was soft, warm, alive. Everything Elena's had become cold and still. Come with me. The words surprised them both. What? You saved my mother. Let me return the favor. His thumb brushed across her pulse point, feeling her heart race. I can get you anywhere in the world before your father's men reach the parking lot. Sierra stared at him for a long moment. Outside, the sound of approaching vehicles grew louder. You don't even know me. I know you donated bone marrow to save a stranger when you were 19. I know you stopped on a dangerous highway in a storm to save my mother's life. I know you're running from something. His voice dropped. And I know Elena would have liked you. Sierra's phone buzzed with a text from her father's security. 2 minutes out, she looked at Damien's extended hand, then at the approaching headlights through the window. If I go with you, she said slowly, what happens then? Damien's smile was dangerous and beautiful. Then we find out why the universe keeps putting you in my path. She thought running away from her father's control was the hardest thing she'd ever done, until the day she discovered he'd been controlling her charity, too. The Vaughn mansion perched on the Palo Alto hillside like a glass monument to paranoia. Every window was smart glass, every door biometric locked, every corner monitored by cameras that recorded Sierra's rebellion in high definition. She made it exactly 8 hours of freedom before the security team dragged her home. Now she sat in her father's office while he paced behind his mahogany desk, his silver hair perfectly styled despite being woken at 3 a.m. Monterey, Sierra? Really? Richard Vaughn's voice could freeze champagne. You couldn't have your breakdown somewhere with better cell coverage? It wasn't a breakdown. Sierra kept her voice level, though her hands shook in her lap. It was a rescue. You nearly died saving some stranger. Blood loss, shock, hypothermia from that damn storm. I saved her life. You risked yours. His fist slammed the desk, making his coffee mug jump. Do you have any idea what could have happened? What if that woman had been dangerous? What if someone had seen you alone and vulnerable? Sierra stood, her borrowed scrubs rustling. What if I'd actually done something meaningful for once in my privileged life? Her father's face went pale. Meaningful? Like the bone marrow donation? The words hit Sierra like a physical blow. She sank back in her chair, staring at him. What do you know about that? Richard moved to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. Outside, dawn painted Silicon Valley in shades of possibility Sierra had never been allowed to explore. I know everything about your life, daughter, including the charity work you think you've been hiding. That donation was anonymous. The hospital promised. Promises are easily broken when you own the right people. He turned back to her, and Sierra saw something like grief in his eyes. Did you really think I'd let you undergo major medical procedures without my knowledge? The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing closer. Every act of rebellion, every moment of independence she'd stolen, he'd known about all of it. You've been watching me, protecting you. From what? Richard was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft, broken. From what happened to your mother? Sierra's breath caught. Her mother had died when Sierra was 5. A car accident, she'd been told. They never talked about it. Mom died in a crash. Your mother died because she had a genetic heart condition. The same condition that runs in our family. The same condition that made your bone marrow donation nearly kill you. The tech mogul's mansion, with its smart home features activated by wealth and paranoia, suddenly felt like a tomb. No amount of technology could hide the emptiness that echoed through its pristine halls, or the fear that had shaped Sierra's entire life. I was fine after the donation. You fainted twice during the procedure. Your heart stopped for 37 seconds. His voice cracked. I almost lost you to save some stranger. Sierra's chest tightened. But I didn't die. This time, the words hung between them like a death sentence. Sierra pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart beat steady and strong. Is that why you never let me date? Never let me have friends over? Never let me have a normal life? I let you live. Richard moved to his desk, pulled out a thick file. Every doctor's appointment, every test, every medication. I've been monitoring your heart for 17 years. What would you do if you discovered your parents have been hiding your own charitable acts from you? How far would you go to break free from someone else's version of protection? Sierra opened the file with trembling hands. Medical records dating back to her childhood. EKGs, blood tests, specialist consultations. Pages and pages of her father's terror disguised as data. You had no right. I had every right. You're my daughter. I'm an adult with a potentially fatal heart condition who just spent 3 hours in a trauma bay covered in someone else's blood. Sierra slammed the file shut. Her father's fear was suffocating her, wrapping around her throat like a noose made of love and loss. Whose life did I save? She asked quietly. Richard's jaw tightened. Does it matter? It matters to me. Some woman named Elena Cross. She died anyway, 18 months later. Your sacrifice bought her 18 months. Elena Cross, the name from the hospital. Damien's wife. Sierra's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thank you for saving my mother. Would you like to meet the woman whose life you saved 3 years ago? I have something that belonged to Elena. Something she wanted her donor to have. Damien. Her father's voice was ice cold as he read over her shoulder. That bone marrow donation nearly killed you. I made sure you'd never know whose life you saved, never get drawn into their world, never risk yourself for strangers again. Sierra's heart hammered against her ribs. Whose life? Some venture capitalist's wife. Rich people who thought money could buy them a miracle. His voice was bitter. It couldn't. She died anyway. Before Sierra could respond, the doorbell rang. Through the security camera's feed on her father's desk, she saw Damien Cross standing at their gate. He wore dark jeans and a simple white shirt that made him look younger, more approachable. In his hands, he held a single white rose. Richard's face went hard. How'd he find us? Sierra stared at the screen, at the man who'd offered to take her anywhere in the world. The man whose wife's life she'd extended by 18 months. The man whose mother she'd saved just hours ago. Maybe, she said softly, he was supposed to. He came to thank her for saving his mother, but ended up confessing how she'd already saved his wife, his world, and his will to live 3 years before they ever met. Sierra found Damien in the mansion's garden, standing by the infinity pool that overlooked Silicon Valley. Her father had refused to let him inside, but Sierra had her own ways of circumventing Richard Vaughn's rules. At 22, she'd become an expert at finding loopholes in her father's protection. You shouldn't be here, she said, but she didn't ask him to leave. Damien turned, and Sierra's breath caught. In daylight, he was even more devastating. Dark hair, slightly mussed by the morning breeze, eyes the color of espresso, and a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled but was trying to for her benefit. Your father made that clear. Damien held up the white rose. I brought this for you. Elena grew them in our garden. She's been dead for over a year, 15 months. His voice was rough with old grief. But the roses keep blooming. They sat on the stone bench overlooking the valley, city lights twinkling like fallen stars in the distance. Sierra left space between them, but she could feel his warmth anyway. Tell me about her, Sierra said. Damien's hands shook as he pulled out his phone, scrolled to a photo. The woman on the screen had dark hair, laughing eyes, and a smile that could power cities. She was beautiful in the way that made other women both envious and protective. She was a pediatric nurse, spent her days saving other people's children. His thumb traced the phone screen. When she got sick, she made me promise not to let it change me, not to let her death make me bitter. Did it? For a while. He looked at Sierra, and she saw years of pain carefully controlled. Until yesterday, when I watched someone risk everything to save my mother. The garden was silent except for the soft hum of the pool's filtration system and the distant hum of Silicon Valley below. Sierra studied Elena's photo, noting the kind eyes, the way she leaned into Damien's embrace like she belonged there. She was lucky to have you. I was lucky to have her. Damien swiped to another photo. This was taken 2 weeks after your bone marrow donation. She was strong enough to come home. Elena looked fragile but radiant, sitting in a hospital bed with flowers surrounding her like offerings to a patron saint of hope. I never thought about her after the donation, Sierra confessed. Is that terrible? I mean, I hope she'd be okay, but I didn't think about her as a real person. You were 19. You gave her bone marrow to save a complete stranger. That's more humanity than most people show in a lifetime. Sierra's chest tightened, but she died anyway. She lived. For 18 months, she lived fully and completely. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. We got married in her hospital room 3 days before she passed. She wore the dress she'd picked out 2 years earlier, back when we thought we had forever. If you found out you'd been connected to someone's life in ways you never knew, would it feel like fate or coincidence? Have you ever discovered hidden connections to strangers? Sierra's throat burned. I'm sorry. Don't be. Elena would have hated pity. Damien turned to face her fully. She used to say that bone marrow donations were like love. You give part of yourself to keep someone else alive, and somehow you both become more than you were before. That's beautiful. She was beautiful, inside and out. His eyes met Sierra's. She also would have liked you. You don't know that. She had a theory about people who donate anonymously. Said they had to have generous hearts to give without expecting recognition. Damien's mouth curved into the first real smile Sierra had seen from him. She was right about most things. Not everything, apparently. She married you. Damien laughed, a sound rich and surprised. Elena would have loved that response. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher over the valley. Sierra found herself studying Damien's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way grief had carved character into his features. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. Why did you really come here? It wasn't just to thank me. Damien was quiet for so long Sierra thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was careful, controlled. Elena kept a journal during her treatment. I found it after she died. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small leather book. She wrote about you, the anonymous donor who saved her life. Sierra's hands trembled as she took the journal. What did she say? Read the entry from March 15th. 2 days before she died. Sierra opened to the marked page, and Elena's handwriting flowed across it like a conversation with the future. If Dee finds the woman who saved me, he should know. She already proved she is the heart I'm leaving him with. Don't let fear win, my love. Choose her. P.S. I have a feeling she'll have beautiful eyes. Tell her I said thank you. The journal slipped from Sierra's fingers as she stared at Damien with dawning understanding. She knew, Sierra whispered. Elena always said the universe doesn't waste connections. Damien's hand covered hers, warm and solid and alive. Maybe she was right. Elena's photo slipped from Sierra's trembling fingers as she whispered. She was beautiful. Damien's voice was raw. She lived 18 months longer because of you. 18 months of sunrises, laughter, love. Sierra looked up to find tears on his cheeks. I've been looking for you for 3 years. The admission hung between them like a confession, full of grief and hope and something that felt dangerously close to destiny. She invited him to stay for dinner, thinking it was kindness, not knowing that some invitations change everything, especially when lightning splits the California sky. The storm hit Silicon Valley like nature's temper tantrum. By 6 p.m., rain lashed the mansion's floor-to-ceiling windows while wind howled through the valley like a warning. Sierra found Damien in the guest bathroom, staring at his reflection with the intensity of a man trying to solve an impossible equation. The roads are flooded, she said from the doorway. Dad's security team says it's not safe to drive. Damien met her eyes in the mirror. Are you asking me to stay? I'm telling you that you don't have a choice. His smile was small but genuine. There's a difference? With me? Usually not. They had dinner in the breakfast nook while the storm raged outside. Sierra's father had retreated to his office, claiming urgent business calls, but she caught him watching them through the security feeds. Let him watch. For the first time in years, Sierra felt interesting enough to surveil. So, Sierra said, pushing pasta around her plate, venture capitalist. That's very Silicon Valley of you, says the cybersecurity heiress. I don't actually work for my father's company. What do you do? Sierra's fork paused halfway to her mouth. That's a great question. You don't know. I know what I don't do. I don't work. I don't go to school anymore. I don't date. She set down her fork. I exist very expensively. Damien studied her face in the candlelight. That doesn't sound like living. It's not. The honesty surprised them both. Sierra rarely admitted her emptiness out loud, especially to near strangers. But something about Damien made confession feel safe. Elena used to say that surviving wasn't the same as living, he said quietly. Smart woman. The smartest. His voice carried old pain and fresh appreciation. She would have called your father overprotective. That's a nice way to put it. Lightning illuminated the dining room, and Sierra was close enough to see gold flecks in Damien's dark eyes. Thunder followed seconds later, shaking the windows. The power's going to go out, Sierra said. How do you know? This house has been struck by lightning 4 times since I was a kid. Dad refuses to move because he says this is the safest location in the valley, but apparently not safe from acts of God. As if summoned by her words, the lights flickered and died. Emergency generators kicked in, bathing the mansion in dim amber light that made everything look like a movie set. I should find some real candles, Sierra said, but she didn't move. Neither did Damien. Have you ever felt more connected to someone during a storm? Something about sharing shelter that breaks down walls? Tell me about moments when nature forced intimacy. The storm had transformed the mansion into something primordial. Shadows dancing on walls, rain creating percussion against glass, electricity crackling not just in the air, but between their bodies as they gravitated toward each other like opposing forces finally giving into physics. This is probably a bad idea, Sierra said. Probably. My father has cameras everywhere. Even in here, especially in here. Damien's hand found hers across the small table. His thumb traced circles on her palm, and Sierra's breath hitched. Then let's give him something worth watching. The words should have sounded arrogant. Instead, they sounded like a promise. Sierra stood, and Damien followed. In the dim emergency lighting, he looked younger, more dangerous. The controlled businessman facade had cracked, revealing something raw underneath. I don't do this, Sierra said as he stepped closer. Do what? Invite strange men to stay the night. Let them hold my hand. Feel. She struggled for words. Feel what? Anything. Damien's free hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing her bottom lip. I don't do this either. I haven't felt anything for someone in over a year. Since Elena. The name should have been a barrier between them. Instead, it felt like a bridge. Elena's memory not pushing them apart, but drawing them together. Her final wishes echoing in the storm's chaos. I should go, Damien whispered, but his thumb was still tracing Sierra's lip. The roads are flooded, she whispered back. Then I guess I'm at your mercy. Sierra's laugh was breathless. I've never had anyone at my mercy before. How does it feel? Terrifying. Lightning split the sky again, illuminating the room in stark white brilliance. In that flash, Sierra saw everything clearly. Damien's desire, her own need, the way they were both leaning forward like plants towards sunlight. When darkness returned, she was close enough to feel his breath on her lips. Sierra, he said, her name a question and a prayer. Yes, she answered, though he hadn't asked anything. But then her father's voice cut through the moment like a blade. The generators will run all night. Your guest room is prepared, Mr. Cross. Richard Vaughn stood in the doorway, his phone's flashlight creating harsh shadows on his face. His message was clear. I'm watching. Damien stepped back, his hand falling away from Sierra's face. Professional distance snapped back into place like armor. "Thank you for your hospitality," Damien said formally. "Don't thank me yet," Richard replied. The storm supposed to last until morning. As her father disappeared back into the shadows, Sierra caught Damien's wrist. "Room 3B, she whispered. "Top of the stairs, into the hall." "Sierra, the cameras don't work in the guest wing. Dad had them removed after his business partner complained about privacy." Damien's eyes darkened. "Are you sure?" Sierra had never been sure of anything in her carefully controlled life. But as lightning illuminated his face again, she realized that certainty was overrated. "Midnight," she said, "if you want to." His smile was dangerous and beautiful. "I want to." She'd saved 2 lives without knowing it. But when she kissed him in the candlelit darkness, she realized some rescues work both ways. The mansion felt different in the blackout. No security cameras watching. No smart home features tracking their movements. Just 2 people caught between lightning strikes, breathing the same charged air. Sierra found herself stepping closer to Damien in the flickering light. Her heart hammered against her ribs, not from fear of the storm outside, but from something far more dangerous building between them. "I should check the backup generator," she whispered but didn't move. "Should you?" His voice was rough, uncertain. The next flash of lightning illuminated his face, strong jaw, dark eyes fixed on her mouth. She'd never noticed how full his lips were, how his expensive shirt clung to broad shoulders. "Sierra." Her name sounded different when he said it. Like prayer, like confession. "I know." She reached up, fingertips brushing his cheek. "I know this is crazy." Crazy doesn't begin to cover it. But his hands found her waist, pulled her closer. "You saved Elena. You saved my mother. And now?" "Now what?" "Now you're saving me." When his mouth touched hers, everything else disappeared. The storm, the mansion, the impossible coincidences that brought them together. There was only heat and want, and the shocking realization that she'd been empty her entire life without knowing it. He kissed her like she was the answer to prayers he'd forgotten how to say. Like he'd been drowning and she was air, her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him deeper into the kiss, surprised by her own desperation. "Sierra," he breathed against her lips. "Are you sure?" She pulled back, studying his face in the candlelight. This man who'd loved his wife so completely, who'd spent 3 years looking for her, who looked at her like she was precious instead of convenient. "I've never been sure of anything in my life," she admitted, then smiled. "Except right now." He lifted her onto the marble kitchen counter, stepping between her legs. His hands shook as they traced her face, her throat, the edge of her silk blouse. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Do what?" "Feel this much without fear." His thumb brushed across her lower lip. "Then let me show you." He undressed her slowly, reverently. Each button opened like a small ceremony. When his mouth followed his hands, tasting the skin he revealed, Sierra arched against him with a sound she'd never made before. "You're perfect," he murmured against her collarbone. "I'm not. I'm spoiled and sheltered and you're brave." His hands stilled her protests. "You pulled a dying woman into your car. You donated bone marrow to a stranger. You're the strongest person I know." When he finally moved inside her, Sierra understood why people wrote songs about this feeling, why they fought wars and built monuments and threw away kingdoms. This wasn't just physical pleasure, it was recognition, connection, coming home to someone she'd never met, but somehow always known. Later, wrapped in his arms on the living room sofa, she traced patterns on his chest while rain continued its assault on the windows. "Tell me about Elena," she said quietly. "Now, I want to understand who she was, what she meant to you." Damien was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, she was light. Pure J, the kind of person who made everyone around her better just by existing. "I wish I could have met her." "You did in a way. Your bone marrow gave her 18 extra months of sunrises, of laughter, of love." His voice broke slightly. She used to say that whoever saved her must have been an angel. Sierra felt tears sting her eyes. "No angel." "No," he agreed, pressing a kiss to her hair. You're something better. You're real. As dawn broke through the clearing storm, Damien traced patterns on Sierra's shoulder and whispered words that changed everything. I think Elena sent you to me. Sierra's eyes flew open. What do you mean? His smile was sad and beautiful. Tomorrow, I'll show you. Dead wives don't usually leave roadmaps to their replacements. But Elena Cross had always been extraordinary, even in her final wishes. Sierra followed Damien through his Palo Alto home, trying not to feel like an intruder. The house was beautiful but cold. All clean lines and expensive furniture that looked untouched, like a museum instead of a home. She designed most of this, Damien said, catching her expression. But this room, this was hers alone. He opened a door to reveal Elena's study. Unlike the rest of the house, this space felt lived in. Books scattered across surfaces, plants growing wild near the windows, a desk covered with journals, pens, and half-finished sketches. I haven't changed anything, he admitted. Couldn't bring myself to. Sierra moved carefully through the room, touching nothing. It felt sacred somehow, personal in a way that made her throat tight. She wrote constantly, Damien continued, especially after the diagnosis. Said she wanted to leave pieces of herself behind. He pulled a leather journal from the desk drawer. She wrote about you. About me? But she never met me. She didn't need to. He opened the journal, pages filled with Elena's flowing handwriting. Listen to this. The woman who saved me today has the most beautiful eyes. The nurse showed me her photo from the donor database. I can't stop thinking about her. This stranger who gave part of herself to keep me alive. Sierra's breath hitched. She saw my picture? There's more. Damien flipped pages. I keep wondering what her life is like. Is she happy? Does she know how brave she is? I wish I could thank her, but the rules say no contact. So I'm writing to her here, hoping somehow she'll know. The words hit Sierra like physical blows. This woman, this beautiful, dying woman, had thought about her, worried about her, cared about a complete stranger's happiness. Here, Damien said softly. This one's from 6 months before she died. The cancer's back, but I'm not afraid anymore. I got extra time because of her gift. Time to love Damien deeper. Time to prepare him for what comes next. If something happens to me, I hope he finds someone who understands what it means to give without expecting anything back. Someone with a heart big enough to save strangers. Sierra sank into Elena's reading chair, overwhelmed. She was planning for you to move on. She worried about me being alone. Damien sat on the floor beside her chair. But look at this entry from 2 weeks before she died. He found the page, voice growing thick as he read. Had the strangest dream last night. I was standing in a hospital room, healthy and whole. The woman who saved me was there too, older now, more beautiful. She was crying, but not from sadness, from joy. In the dream, I understood why we were connected. It wasn't just about bone marrow. It was about love, about making sure Damien wouldn't be alone forever. Sierra's hand shook. That's impossible, is it? Damien looked up at her. You pulled my mother from the roadside. You saved Elena's life 3 years ago. You show up exactly when we need you most. If that's coincidence, it's the most incredible one in history. He turned to the final entry, dated the day before Elena died. She left this for me to find. If Dee finds the woman who saved me, he should know she already proved she has the heart I'm leaving him with. Don't let fear win, my love. Choose her. Sierra wiped tears from her cheeks. I can't replace her. I'm not asking you to. Damien reached for her hands. Elena was my first love, the love that taught me what was possible. But you, he brought her fingers to his lips. You're my second chance. And according to her, that was always the plan. Sierra stared at Elena's handwriting, at this woman's generous heart laid bare on paper. What if I'm not good enough? What if I can't live up to? Read this. Damien pointed to Elena's final line. P.S. I have a feeling she'll have beautiful eyes. Tell her I said thank you. Sierra's breath caught. Elena had seen her eyes in that donor photo 3 years ago, had remembered them, had somehow known they would matter to Damien's future. She gave us permission, Damien said quietly. But more than that, she gave us her blessing. Going public with a tech heiress is easy. Explaining why you're falling for your dead wife's bone marrow donor requires a different kind of courage. The charity gala glittered with Silicon Valley's elite, tech moguls in designer tuxedos, venture capitalists dripping diamonds, the kind of crowd that looked at relationships like stock portfolios, calculating worth and potential returns. Sierra adjusted her emerald gown, nervous. Everyone's staring. They're staring because you're beautiful, Damien murmured, his hand warm at her waist. And because they've never seen me with anyone since Elena. The whispers followed them across the ballroom. Sierra caught fragments of conversation as they passed. Isn't that the Vaughn girl? The tech heiress? How long since his wife died? 2 years? 3. She's young. Pretty. Smart move on his part. Each comment felt like small cut. These people saw dollar signs and strategic alliances. They couldn't understand that she and Damien were connected by something deeper than money or convenience. Having second thoughts? Damien asked, reading her expression. No. Sierra lifted her chin, just remembering why I usually avoid these things. They moved through the crowd, making obligatory small talk. Damien introduced her to investors, entrepreneurs, philanthropists. Most were polite to her face, but Sierra caught the speculation in their eyes. The calculations, the assumption that she was there for his wealth and he was there for her youth. If only they knew the truth. Mr. Cross, a reporter approached with a photographer in tow. Could we get a photo for the society pages? Before Sierra could object, the camera flashed. She blinked away spots, already imagining tomorrow's headlines. The speculation, the gossip. Her father would be furious about the attention. That's enough photos, Damien said firmly, pulling Sierra away from the reporter. They escaped to a quieter corner near the auction tables. Sierra studied the items up for bid, vacation packages, artwork, experiences that cost more than most people's cars. This is your world, she said. No. Damien turned her to face him. This is just business. You're my world. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tight. How do you do that? Do what? Say exactly what I need to hear. Practice. His smile was soft. Elena taught me how to love someone properly, how to see what they need instead of just what I want to give. Before Sierra could respond, an older woman approached. Elegant silver hair, kind eyes, expensive but understated jewelry. Damien, dear. The woman kissed his cheek. You look happy. Mrs. Patterson, this is Sierra Vaughn. Sierra. Mrs. Patterson was Elena's favorite person in the world after me. Sierra tensed, expecting judgment. Instead, Mrs. Patterson studied her with warm curiosity. You have beautiful eyes, the older woman said finally. Elena mentioned that once, about someone who'd done something very kind for her. She said the person had the most beautiful, generous eyes she'd ever seen. Sierra's breath caught. She talked about me? Oh yes, she was fascinated by you. Kept wondering what kind of person gives part of themselves to save a complete stranger. Mrs. Patterson smiled. I can see why she was curious. The approval in the woman's voice was unexpected. Precious. Sierra felt tears threaten. Elena would like you, Mrs. Patterson continued. She always said Damien needed someone strong enough to love him and independent enough not to need him. She was very specific about that. As Mrs. Patterson moved away, Sierra felt something shift inside her chest. Elena's friends accepted her. Elena herself had practically picked her out. Maybe this wasn't betrayal. Maybe it was destiny. Dance with me, Damien said suddenly. They moved onto the dance floor, his arms encircling her as a string quartet played something soft and romantic. Sierra let herself melt against him, forgetting the watching crowd. I love you, he whispered against her ear. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they felt like coming home. I love you too, she whispered back, surprising herself with how easily the truth came. As they swayed together, Sierra caught sight of their reflection in the ballroom's mirrors. They looked right together, like puzzle pieces that had finally found their match. For the first time in her life, Sierra understood what happiness felt like. Not the temporary high of rebellion or purchased pleasure, but deep, sustainable joy. The kind that came from being seen and chosen and cherished by someone who knew exactly who she was. Later, in the car heading home, Damien took her hand. "No regrets?" he asked. Sierra squeezed his fingers. "None. You. Just one." Her heart skipped. "What?" His smile was wicked. "That we have to wait until we get home before I can show you how much I love you properly." Sierra laughed, feeling reckless and alive. Who says we have to wait? She'd spent her life running from her father's overprotection. Now she understood why he tried so hard to keep her safe. The cardiologist's office smelled like antiseptic and fear. Sierra sat on the examination table, paper gown rustling as she tried to stay still while Dr. Martinez reviewed her test results. Damien held her hand, his grip steady despite the worry etched in his face. They'd come in for a routine checkup, just making sure the stress of recent months hadn't affected her health. What they'd found instead was a ticking time bomb. The echocardiogram shows irregularities, Dr. Martinez said carefully. Your heart rhythm is unstable. There's also evidence of structural weakness in the left ventricle. Sierra's mouth went dry. What does that mean? It means you have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, the same condition that killed Elena Cross. The words hit like physical blows. Sierra felt Damien's hand tighten around hers, felt the blood drain from her face. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I donated bone marrow. I was healthy. This condition can remain dormant for years," the doctor explained. "Stress, physical exertion, even emotional trauma can trigger symptoms. The fainting during your bone marrow donation? That wasn't normal fatigue. That was your heart struggling even then." Sierra stared at the monitor, showing her heart's erratic rhythm. "How long do I have?" "With treatment, we can manage it. Medications to regulate your heart rate. Lifestyle changes." "How long?" Damien's voice was sharp. Dr. Martinez hesitated. "Without intervention, this condition typically progresses rapidly. Elena lived 18 months after diagnosis, but she had advanced care from the beginning." 18 months. The same 18 months Sierra's bone marrow had given Elena. The irony was crushing. "There are options," the doctor continued. "Experimental treatments. A new procedure being developed in Switzerland. But it's risky, and the waiting list is extensive." Sierra nodded mechanically, not really hearing. She was 22 years old. She just found the love of her life. And now her heart, the same heart that had fallen for Damien, was trying to kill her. The drive home was silent. Damien's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched tight. Sierra stared out the window at the California landscape, wondering how many more times she'd see these hills, these trees, this sky. "Say something," she whispered. "What do you want me to say?" His voice was raw. "That it's fair? That I finally found you just to lose you too? That the universe has a sixth sense of humor? I want you to say we'll figure this out." Damien pulled over, hands shaking as he turned off the engine. When he looked at her, his eyes were bright with tears. "I can't lose you," he said. "I won't. Elena taught me how to love you, but losing her taught me what that loss feels like. I can't go through that again." Sierra reached for him, her own tears falling. "Then don't give up on me. Never." He kissed her fiercely, desperately. "We'll find a way. We'll try everything." That night, Sierra found her father waiting in the mansion's living room. His face was pale, aged 10 years since morning. "You told him," she said. "It wasn't a question. He deserved to know." Her father's voice was thick. "And so do you, about your mother." Sierra sank into a chair, exhausted. "What about her?" "She died of the same condition when you were 5. I've been monitoring your heart ever since. Regular checkups, genetic testing, everything. I thought if I could keep you safe, keep you from stress and exertion." "You knew I was at risk?" "I hoped you'd inherited my genetics instead of hers. The tests were inconclusive for years. But when you donated bone marrow against my wishes, when you fainted..." He rubbed his face. "I should have told you then." Sierra felt anger rise in her chest, hot and choking. "You let me live in ignorance? Let me make decisions without knowing. I wanted you to have a normal life." The words exploded from him. "Your mother spent her last years terrified, watching every heartbeat, afraid to live because she might die. I couldn't let that happen to you." So you controlled everything instead. Sierra's voice was bitter. My activities, my friends, my choices. You turned me into a prisoner and called it protection. Her father's shoulders sagged. I thought I was saving you. The only thing that saved me was leaving. Sierra stood, fury giving her strength. Meeting Damien, falling in love, finally feeling alive instead of just existing. And now, Sierra felt her resolve crystallize. Now I fight. For every day, every moment, every heartbeat I can get. Because I'd rather have 1 year of real life than 50 years of fear. As she walked upstairs, her father's voice followed her. I've already made calls. Switzerland, Johns Hopkins, the Mayo Clinic. Money is no object, Sierra. We'll find a way. For the first time in her life, Sierra was grateful for her family's wealth. If money could buy time, if resources could buy miracles, then she'd use every advantage she had. She found Damien on her balcony, staring out at the city lights. When she joined him, he pulled her close without speaking. Elena lived 18 months after diagnosis, Sierra said quietly. You're not Elena. No, I'm going to live longer. We're going to have more time. Promise me. Sierra turned in his arms, meeting his desperate gaze. I promise to fight. For us. For the life we're building. For everything we haven't done yet. He kissed her like she was already slipping away. Like he could hold her to life through sheer force of will. And maybe he could. Maybe love really was strong enough to cheat death. They'd find out soon enough. Love isn't supposed to be a medical emergency. But when your heart literally can't handle the intensity, every kiss becomes a calculated risk. The ICU at Stanford Medical Center hummed with machines keeping Sierra stable. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking every heartbeat while she slept fitfully under sedation. Her collapse had been sudden, terrifying. One moment laughing at something Damien said, the next crumpling to the floor as her heart forgot its rhythm. Damien hadn't left her side in 3 days. Unshaven, exhausted, he held vigil like a man afraid that looking away might make her disappear. You need to go home, Dr. Martinez said, checking Sierra's latest readouts. Shower. Sleep. She's stable now. I'm not leaving her. Damien's voice was hoarse from disuse. Mr. Cross, you collapsing from exhaustion won't help anyone. I left Elena alone when she died, Damien said quietly. I was in a meeting, some acquisition that seemed important at the time. She died while I was arguing about stock options. Dr. Martinez softened. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? Damien's laugh was bitter. I had one job, love her completely while I could. Instead, I wasted time on things that didn't matter. Sierra's eyes fluttered open, fixing on his face. Hey, she whispered. Hey yourself. He leaned closer, smoothing hair from her forehead. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. A very medical truck. She tried to smile, but it came out weak. How long was I out? 3 days. You scared me. Saudi. She squeezed his hand. I'm okay now. No, you're not. The words came out harder than he intended. You're not okay, Sierra. Your heart stopped for 47 seconds. 47. I counted everyone. Sierra saw the fear in his eyes, the weight of watching another woman he loved fight for life. I'm still here. For how long? The question hung between them like a blade. Dr. Martinez cleared his throat. Actually, we have news. Your father has been working with some colleagues in Switzerland. There's an experimental procedure. How experimental? Damien interrupted. It's been performed successfully in 12 cases worldwide. The surgeon, Dr. Richter, has agreed to see Sierra next week. Sierra struggled to sit up. What kind of procedure? Genetic therapy combined with surgical repair. They essentially rebuild the damaged heart muscle using your own stem cells, then reprogram the genetic markers that cause the condition. Success rate? Damien asked. 80% survival. Of those, 90% show complete resolution of symptoms. Sierra felt hope flutter in her chest. Dangerous, fragile hope. And the other 20%? Dr. Martinez hesitated. Don't survive the procedure. The hope crashed. 20% chance of death. 4-to-1 odds. Better than certain death, but not by much. When do we leave? Damien asked. You don't have to, Sierra began. Don't. His voice was sharp. Don't even think about doing this alone. That night, Sierra convinced the nursing staff to let Damien stay in her room. He pulled a chair close to her bed, holding her hand while she dozed. Tell me about the future, she whispered in the darkness. What future? The one where this works, where we get our happily ever after. Damien was quiet for a long moment. We get married. Somewhere small, just family and friends. You wear your grandmother's dress, the one your father showed me in the photo. What else? We travel. All the places Elena and I never got to see. Paris in spring. The Northern Lights. That little island in Greece she always talked about. Sierra smiled in the darkness. Kids. 3. 2 girls who look like you. 1 boy who's probably too smart for his own good. We named the oldest Elena. After your wife. After the woman who brought us together. His thumb traced patterns on her hand. She'd like that. She always wanted children. Sierra felt tears slip down her cheeks. I want that future. Then fight for it. Damien leaned closer, his voice fierce. Fight like hell, because I can't build that life without you. What if the procedure doesn't work? Then we make the most of whatever time we have. But Sierra, he met her eyes in the dim light. I believe it will work. I have to. The next morning, Sierra's father arrived with a thick folder of medical documents and travel arrangements. Private jet to Zurich, suite at the best hotel, consultations with the world's top cardiac specialists. The procedure is scheduled for Friday, he announced. Dr. Richter has cleared his schedule. Sierra nodded, trying to ignore the fear clawing at her chest. 5 days to prepare for surgery that would either save her life or end it. There's something else, her father said carefully. The procedure, there could be complications, memory issues, personality changes. The brain doesn't always handle the stress well. What kind of memory issues? Damien asked. Best case, nothing. Worst case, her father looked uncomfortable. You might not remember the last few years. Meeting Damien, falling in love. Your mind could reset to before the trauma. Sierra felt the world tilt. Lose her memories of Damien? Forget falling in love? Wake up not knowing why this man was holding her hand? It's rare, her father added quickly. Only happened in 2 cases. But it's possible. Sierra's voice was flat. Possible. Not likely. Sierra looked at Damien, seeing her own fear reflected in his eyes. They could save her life, but lose their love. Or they could do nothing and lose everything anyway. We take the risk, she said finally. All of it. Whatever happens, we face it together. Damien brought her hand to his lips. Together, as they prepared for Switzerland, Sierra tried to memorize everything. The way Damien's eyes crinkled when he smiled. How his voice sounded when he said her name. The exact feeling of being loved completely without reservation. Just in case. She'd kept the pregnancy secret to protect him from another loss. Not knowing that some secrets have the power to save or destroy everything. The private jet cut through clouds at 30,000 feet, carrying Sierra toward what might be her last chance at survival. Through the small window, the Swiss Alps rose like frozen promises, beautiful and cold. But inside the cabin, warmth spread through her chest as Damien's hand covered hers. Your father's on the phone with the surgical team again, Damien said softly, nodding toward the front of the plane where her dad paced, his usual controlled demeanor cracking under pressure. Sierra's free hand moved instinctively to her stomach, where a secret she'd carried for 6 weeks pressed against her ribs like a hell breath. The baby was barely the size of a grape, but already changing everything. She'd planned to tell Damien after the surgery, when survival was certain. Now, listening to her father's desperate negotiations with Swiss doctors, she realized there might not be an after. Damien, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the jet engines. There's something you need to know. He turned to face her fully, those dark eyes that had memorized every detail of her face, now searching for whatever truth she was about to reveal. His thumb traced circles on her palm, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the recycled air between them. Damien's hand stilled on hers. His face went through a dozen emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, joy, terror, confusion, before settling on something that looked like wonder mixed with fear. "How long have you known?" His voice was rough, careful. 6 weeks. Since right after your mother came home from the hospital." Sierra's eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back. "I wanted to tell you, but then the diagnosis came, and I couldn't risk you making decisions based on someone who doesn't even exist yet." Damien's other hand moved to cup her face, his touch reverent and shaking. "Doesn't exist? Sierra, this baby is the most real thing in the world right now. This is our child." From the front of the plane, her father's voice carried back. "Experimental procedure, yes, but she's not just my daughter. She's carrying my grandchild." Sierra's eyes went wide. "He knows." Damien's smile was soft, amazed. "I think he's known longer than we have. He's had you monitored by the best doctors in Silicon Valley since you collapsed. They would have caught the pregnancy immediately. The revelation should have made her angry. More surveillance, more control. Instead, she felt relief. Her father's overprotective nature finally made sense. He wasn't just trying to save his daughter. He was trying to save his family's future. "Are you scared?" she asked Damien, her fingers intertwining with his. Terrified, he admitted, "I lost Elena. I can't lose you too. And now, there's someone else to protect, someone who's part of both of us." His voice broke slightly. "I've never wanted anything more in my life, and I've never been more afraid of losing it." Sierra pulled his hand to her belly, where their secret was growing in the darkness. "Then you understand why I didn't tell you. This baby doesn't get to be the reason you choose my life over yours. We both make it, or we find another way." The plane began its descent towards Zurich, city lights twinkling below like earthbound stars. Damien leaned down and kissed her forehead, his lips lingering against her skin. "Elena always said she wanted us to have children. She used to joke that our babies would have her stubbornness in my eyes." He pulled back to look at Sierra. She was half right. What if something goes wrong? Sierra's question was barely a whisper. "Then we'll face it together. All three of us." As the plane touched down on Swiss soil, Sierra felt the baby flutter for the first time, a tiny movement like butterfly wings against her ribs. A sign that life, even in its smallest form, was already fighting to stay. Have you ever carried a secret so big it felt like it might break you? When protecting someone you love means hiding the truth from them. Share your thoughts in the comments below. The surgical team was waiting at the airport, but so was news that would change everything again. She'd given her bone marrow to save a stranger. Now she had to decide whether to risk their child's life to save her own. The Swiss cardiac clinic smelled like sterility and hope, two scents that shouldn't go together, but somehow did in a place where impossible surgeries happened every day. Sierra lay in the pre-op room, her hand resting on her belly while machines beeped steadily around her. Dr. Klaus Weber stood at the foot of her bed, his English precise but kind. Behind him, monitors displayed her heart's irregular rhythm and the baby's strong, steady beat. Two completely different drum patterns fighting for space in the same body. "The procedure will require stopping your heart for 47 minutes, Dr. Weber explained, his hands folded professionally. "We can protect the baby during this time, but there are risks. The anesthesia, the blood loss, the shock to your system. Any of these could trigger complications." Damien sat beside the bed, his face pale but determined. Her father stood by the window, staring out at the Alps as if the mountains held answers. Both men were trying to stay strong, but Sierra could feel their terror like electricity in the air. "What are the odds?" she asked, though part of her didn't want to know. "For you, 92% survival rate. For the baby," Dr. Weber paused, 78%. The numbers hit like physical blows. Sierra had survived on luck and stubbornness her whole life, but luck wasn't something you could pass down to your unborn child. "There's another option," Dr. Weber continued. "We wait until after delivery. Your heart condition is stable for now. You could carry to term, deliver safely, then have the surgery. And if my heart gives out before then?" Sierra's voice was steady, but her hand tightened on Damien's. "The pregnancy puts additional strain on your cardiovascular system. Every week increases the risk of sudden cardiac failure." Damien spoke for the first time since they'd entered the room. So we're choosing between risking our baby now or risking Sierra later. That's correct. Sierra closed her eyes and felt the baby move again, that flutter of life that had become her constant companion. 6 weeks ago, she'd been a spoiled rich girl running from her problems. Now, she was a mother making decisions that would echo through generations. "I need a minute with my family," she said. Dr. Weber nodded and left them alone with machines and monitors and the weight of impossible choices. Her father turned from the window, tears she'd never seen before tracking down his cheeks. "I lost your mother to this same condition. I won't lose you too." "Dad, no, let me finish." He moved to her bedside, his voice thick with 20 years of suppressed grief. "Your mother chose to have you knowing it might kill her. She said some risks were worth taking because the alternative was no life at all." He touched her hand gently. "I've spent your entire life trying to protect you from that choice. But maybe that's not my decision to make." Damien's grip on her other hand was steady, strong. "Whatever you decide, I'll support. But Sierra, I need you to know, I can't lose you. I survived losing Elena because I had to. If I lose you..." His voice broke. "There's no coming back from that." Sierra opened her eyes and looked at the two men who loved her most in the world. One who'd spent decades trying to keep her safe, another who'd found healing in her presence, both willing to let her choose her own fate. "I want to talk to the baby," she said softly. They might have thought she was delirious from pre-surgery medication, but both men stayed quiet as Sierra placed both hands on her belly and spoke to the life growing inside her. "Hey, little one, I know you can't understand this yet, but we're about to make a decision together. Your daddy and I, we've been through a lot to get here. We lost someone we both loved, and we found each other because of her. Now we need to decide if we're brave enough to fight for our future." The baby fluttered like an answer. Sierra looked up at Damien, her decision crystallizing like morning frost. "We do the surgery. Today. Both of us fight, or both of us don't. But we don't spend the next 7 months wondering if tomorrow is the day my heart stops. What would you choose if every option carried the risk of losing everything? When being brave might mean being foolish. Tell me in the comments what courage looks like to you." As they wheeled Sierra toward the operating room, she whispered a prayer to Elena. "Watch over all 3 of us." She woke up with a perfect heart and a healthy daughter, but no memory of falling in love with a man holding them both. Consciousness returned in pieces, like a jigsaw puzzle assembled by trembling hands. First came the beeping of machines, steady and reassuring. Then the antiseptic smell of recovery rooms. Finally, voices, familiar but distant, like hearing conversations through water. "She's waking up." A man's voice, rough with exhaustion and relief. Sierra's eyes fluttered open to find fluorescent lights that seemed too bright, too harsh. She tried to speak but found her throat dry, scratchy. A straw appeared at her lips, cool water flooding her mouth. "Take it slow," the voice said again. Sierra turned her head and saw a man sitting beside her bed. Handsome, expensive suit wrinkled from what looked like days of wear, dark eyes red-rimmed but kind. He looked like he'd been crying. "Do I know you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The man's face cracked like glass. He reached for her hand, then stopped himself mid-motion. "I'm Damien. Damien Cross." The name meant nothing. Sierra tried to sit up, but pain shot through her chest where surgical incisions were healing. "Where am I? What happened to me?" Before Damien could answer, a nurse entered carrying something small and squirming wrapped in pink blankets. "Someone wants to meet her mama," the nurse said with a smile that seemed forced, too bright. Sierra stared at the bundle being placed in her arms. A baby. Tiny, perfect, with dark hair and features that looked familiar in a way she couldn't explain. The infant's eyes opened, revealing the same dark color as the man claiming to know her. "This is my baby?" Sierra asked, though something deep in her chest already knew the answer. Her arms curved around the child protectively, muscle memory kicking in despite her confused mind. "Her name is Elena," Damien said softly, "after someone we both loved very much." Elena. The name felt right on Sierra's tongue, like a word she'd been waiting her whole life to say. The baby made a small noise and instinctively turned towards Sierra's chest, seeking food, comfort, warmth. "I don't remember having a baby," Sierra said, panic creeping into her voice. "I don't remember you. I don't remember anything after." She struggled to grasp the last clear memory. "I was fighting with my father, in Palo Alto, about something important." Damien's face was carefully controlled, but she could see devastation in his eyes. "The surgery was successful. Your heart is completely repaired. Elena is healthy, but there were some complications with the anesthesia. Memory loss isn't uncommon with cardiac procedures." An older man appeared in the doorway, tall, silver-haired, familiar in the way that bone-deep recognition hits. "Dad." Sierra's voice was uncertain. "Hello, sweetheart." Her father's smile was relieved but cautious. "How are you feeling?" "Confused. Scared." She looked down at the baby in her arms, then back at Damien. "You're telling me this man is, what? My boyfriend? My husband?" "We're not married," Damien said carefully. "But yes, we've been together for several months." "Sierra, you saved my mother's life on Highway 1. That's how we met." Fragments floated through Sierra's mind like half-remembered dreams. A rainy road, blood on her hands, a woman barely breathing. But the emotions attached to these memories felt distant, like watching someone else's life on television. The baby, Elena, made another soft sound, and Sierra found herself automatically adjusting her hold, rocking slightly. Her body knew how to do this, even if her mind didn't understand why. "She knows you," Damien observed, his voice thick with emotion. "Even if you don't remember, your body remembers her." Over the next 3 days, Damien rarely left Sierra's side. He showed her photos on his phone, pictures of them together, laughing, kissing, holding hands. In every image, Sierra looked happy in a way she'd never seen herself before. Radiant, complete. But looking at the photos felt like studying strangers who happened to share a face. He told her stories about their first kiss during a storm, about Elena's journal giving them permission to love, about late nights talking until sunrise. He spoke about her pregnancy announcement on the plane, about her courage in choosing surgery. With each story, Sierra felt something stirring in her chest. Not memory exactly, but longing. This man clearly loved her with a depth that was both beautiful and terrifying. And their daughter, tiny Elena, seemed to bridge the gap between who Sierra had been and who she was now. Do you believe love can exist without memory? That some connections run deeper than conscious thought? Share your experiences with love that transcends understanding. 3 weeks into recovery, Sierra was reading to Elena when a photograph fell from the book, but what she saw in that picture would change everything again. Some memories return like whispers. Others hit like lightning, illuminating everything you thought you'd lost forever. The photograph was old, slightly faded, tucked between pages of a children's book Damien had brought for Elena. Sierra stared at the image of herself, years younger, lying in a hospital bed with 4 lines snaking from her arms. But it wasn't her younger self that made her gasp. It was the woman sitting beside the bed, holding her hand. Beautiful, radiant despite obvious illness. Dark hair, framing a face that looked exactly like Elena would in 25 years. "Damien," Sierra called, her voice sharp with urgency. He appeared in the nursery doorway immediately, still wearing the constant expression of careful hope he'd maintained for weeks. "What's wrong?" Sierra held up the photograph with trembling fingers. "Who is this woman?" Damien's face went white. He moved slowly, like someone approaching a wild animal that might bolt. "That's Elena, my wife, the woman who received your bone marrow donation. Why do I have a picture of her?" Sierra's heart rate spiked, and for a moment she worried her new cardiovascular system couldn't handle the shock. "You met her. Once. The day after your donation, when you were still recovering. She insisted on thanking you personally." Damien sat carefully on the edge of the rocking chair. "You were so weak from the procedure, barely conscious. The doctors said you probably wouldn't remember." But Sierra was remembering, not in fragments or flashes, but in a complete, overwhelming flood that made her grab the chair arms for support. Elena's voice, soft and grateful. Thank you for giving me more time with him. Her own weak response. Is he worth it? Elena's laugh. Musical despite her illness. More than worth it. Someday you'll understand. The memories crashed over Sierra like ocean waves. Meeting Damien in the hospital, learning about the bone marrow connection, their first kiss during the storm, Elena's journal blessing their love, the pregnancy scare, Switzerland, the surgery. But strongest of all was the feeling that had driven every choice. The absolute certainty that loving this man was worth any risk. "Oh God," Sierra whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Damien, I remember. I remember everything." He was beside her in an instant, kneeling on the nursery floor while she sat frozen in the rocking chair, still holding their sleeping daughter. "What do you remember?" "I love you." The words came out broken, desperate. "I love you so much it scared me. I love you enough to risk dying in surgery, enough to give up everything I thought I wanted. I love you like I've never loved anyone or anything in my entire life." Damien's hands framed her face, his thumbs wiping away tears. "Do you remember why?" Sierra looked down at Elena, then back at the man who'd waited patiently for her mind to catch up with her heart. "Because you saw me. Not my father's money or my last name or what I could do for you. You saw me getting blood on my car seats to save a stranger and recognized something I didn't even know I had." "What?" "A heart worth saving." They kissed then, soft and desperate, and full of relief that tasted like coming home. Elena stirred in Sierra's arms, but didn't wake, as if she knew this moment was sacred. "I'm sorry," Sierra whispered against Damien's lips. "I'm sorry you had to wait for me to remember loving you." "You never stopped loving me," Damien said, his voice thick with emotion. "Even when you couldn't remember why, your body knew me. You let me hold Elena on the first day. You never pulled away when I touched your hand. Love isn't just memory, Sierra. It's deeper than that." Over the next hour, Sierra's memory continued returning in waves. She remembered Elena's final journal entry, the blessing to love again. She remembered her father's revelation about her mother's heart condition. She remembered the moment on the plane when she decided both she and the baby would fight. "Elena visited me in a dream," Sierra said suddenly, "right before I woke up from surgery. She was holding our baby, and she said, 'Take care of him for me.' I thought it was just anesthesia, but what if it wasn't?" Damien finished. They sat in comfortable silence, holding each other and their daughter as afternoon light filtered through the nursery windows. Three hearts beating in perfect rhythm, finally synchronized after months of uncertainty. Have you ever felt love so deep it transcended memory? When your body remembered what your mind forgot? Tell me about connections that run deeper than conscious thought. That evening, they drove to Elena's grave for the first time since Sierra's memory returned, ready to close one chapter and begin another. 3 years ago, she saved a stranger's wife. Today, she married the widower, held their daughter, and finally understood that some love stories are written in blood, bone, and destiny. The morning sun painted Monterey Bay in shades of gold and promise as Sierra stood before the full-length mirror in the bridal suite, adjusting the simple white dress she'd chosen. Not because tradition demanded it, but because it felt right, clean, new, full of possibility. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Her father appeared in the doorway, wearing the smile she'd fought so hard to earn. The smile that said he finally understood she was strong enough to make her own choices. "Thanks, Dad." Sierra turned to face him, noting how different he looked. Less controlling, more supportive. Nearly losing her had changed him too. "Thank you for everything. The surgery, bringing us to Switzerland, accepting Damien. Thank you for surviving long enough for me to learn how to let you go." He held out his arm. "Ready." They walked together toward the cliffside altar where family and friends had gathered. But Sierra's eyes found only one person, Damien, standing beneath an arch of white roses with 2-year-old Elena in his arms. Their daughter wore a tiny white dress that matched Sierra's, her dark hair crowned with flowers. As Sierra approached, Elena reached for her with chubby arms. "Mama." Sierra took their daughter, holding her close as she faced Damien. His eyes were bright with tears he didn't try to hide. After everything they'd been through, surgery, memory loss, sleepless nights with a newborn, building a life together, they were finally here. Finally ready to promise forever. We gather today, the officiant began, to witness the union of Sierra and Damien, brought together by circumstances that can only be called extraordinary. Sierra barely heard the traditional words. Her attention was caught by movement in the crowd. A woman with dark hair and a familiar smile, standing beneath a flowering tree just beyond the ceremony space. When Sierra blinked, the woman raised her hand in a small wave, her expression peaceful, grateful. Elena. Sierra squeezed Damien's hand, and when he followed her gaze, his sharp intake of breath told her he saw her too. Elena mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." Then she was gone, leaving only the scent of white roses and the absolute certainty that they had her blessing. "The vows you've written," the officiant continued, "speak to a love tested by extraordinary circumstances." Damien spoke first, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Sierra, you saved the woman I loved before you ever knew me. You saved my mother without expecting reward. You saved me from believing that second chances were impossible. You gave me Elena, our daughter, proof that love multiplies instead of divides. I promise to see your strength when you feel weak, to love your courage when you feel afraid, and to build a life with you that honors everyone who brought us together." Sierra's voice was clear, certain. "Damien, you taught me that love isn't about rescue. It's about recognition. You saw my heart before I knew it was worth saving. You waited for my memory to return and loved me even when I couldn't remember loving you back. I promise to choose us every day, to fight for our family the way we fought to create it, and to never forget that the greatest gifts are often given to strangers who become everything." Elena babbled happily as they exchanged rings, as if she understood this moment was about making their family official in the eyes of the world. "By the power vested in me by the state of California, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Damien's kiss was soft, reverent, full of promises kept and futures beginning. Elena clapped her tiny hands as their family and friends cheered, the sound mixing with ocean waves below. At the reception, Sierra's father stood to give toast. 3 years ago, my daughter saved a life without knowing whose life she saved. Today, she married the man whose life she saved without knowing she was saving him. That's not coincidence. That's destiny. Later, as they danced their first dance as husband and wife while Elena slept in her grandmother's arms, Damien whispered in Sierra's ear, "Do you think she's watching?" Sierra smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with champagne or celebration. "I think she's finally at peace. We all are. Do you believe some love stories are written before we're born? That destiny finds a way through blood, sacrifice, and second chances?" Share your thoughts on love that transcends the impossible.
If this story of love, loss, and hope found again touched your heart, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories that prove love really can conquer anything, even death, memory loss, and impossible odds. Tell me in the comments what you would sacrifice for love. And remember, sometimes the greatest love stories begin with giving something precious to a complete stranger. You never know whose life you might save, or who might save yours in return.